Hello everyone, great to see you here for another panel in celebration of our Institute anniversary. The title of panel is a bit complicated, as you can see, but I hope that we will chance to explain it after the presentation, after our discussion. My name is Magdalena Radkowska-Walkowicz. I work at the Institute of Ethnology and Cultural Anthropology at the University of Warsaw. And I'm a medical anthropologist, but also I'm a member of Childhood Studies Interdisciplinary Research Team that is organizer and host of this session. So I'm thrilled to be moderating this session and even more thrilled to introduce our amazing panelists. Nicoletta Diasio is our special guest from France. And Nicoletta is a friend of Childhood Studies Interdisciplinary Research Team. And Nicoletta Diasio is anthropologist and sociologist. After a degree in cultural anthropology and comparative literature at the University of Rome, La Sapienza. She got a PhD in medical anthropology at
École des études en sciences sociales.
In Paris, yes. She's full professor at the Faculty of Social Science of the University of Strasbourg, senior fellow at the Institut Universitaire de France, and the editor-in-chief of the scientific journal Revue des Sciences Sociales. Her research focuses on age, body, gender, food practices, biographical and medical transitions as birth, puberty, menopause, masculine midlife, and the experience of chronic and rare disease. She runs several research programs on childhood studies. At the moment, she is managing research with epidemiologists and anthropologists on campaigns on the first 1,000 days of child's life in Eastern France, and on how mothers and families concerned deal with the political discourses and actions of prevention. She is the author, editor or co-editor of several books and special issues in French, English and Italian. The last one, she's co-editor with Małgorzata Reiter. Hello Małgorzata. It's Małgorzata Reiter of the special issue of the journal Medical Anthropology, Living with Rare Disease in Europe, Uncertainty, Negotiation and Temporality. And our next panelist is Marta Rakoczy, professor at the Institute of Polish Culture at the University of Warsaw and head of the Korczak-Janów research center dealing with the legacy of Janusz Korczak, Henryk Goldschmidt, at the Museum of Warsaw. She works on the anthropology of writing and literacy studies, the history of modernization and cultural studies of childhood and youth. Author of many books, I think. Work action in Polish books, but I would translate the title. Word Action Context on Bronisław Malinowski's ethnographic conception of language, and the politics of writing, plenary sketches from paidocentric modernity, and power of letters, Polish modernization process and the avant-garde. And are you working on something now?
I'm not.
No? I'm sure.
What a shame.
It's very strange for me because Marta likes writing books and articles. So. And Marta is, what is very important, Marta is a member of Childhood Studies Interdisciplinary Research Team. And Eva also is a member of this childhood team. Professor Eva Maciejewska-Mroczek works at the Institute of Ethnology and Cultural Anthropology at the University of Warsaw. Doctor of Sociology, Polish Studies, American Studies, and Anthropologist. Co-founder and member of the Childhood Studies Interdisciplinary Research Team. Author of the book on toys and the social construction of child, and publications on childhood. Co-creator and editor of the publishing series Dzieci, Granice, Etnografie, Children's Borders, Ethnographies, and editor of several books published in it. In her scientific work, she is interested in the place and role of children in contemporary culture, and in particular in how their right to co-create society is realized. She also deals with ethical and methodological aspects of research involving children. Member of the team for ethics of social research with the participation of children and the Ombudsman for Children's Rights. Collaborator of the Research Center for Literature for Children and Youth at University of Warsaw. She has conducted research, among others, on toys, children's health, adoption, chronic diseases. Currently, he's managing the research grant, Pandemic and Post-Pandemic Words of Children. Do you want to add something to these pictures? No? Marta about Nicoletta about what? No, okay. So, let me briefly walk you through how we plan today's discussion. So, first, Nicoletta will be sharing the presentation, focusing on her research involving children. And after that, a discussion will follow centered around 4 key questions. Why, how, what, and what for? So, I hope that we will open the floor to questions from the audience, that we have time for it after our discussion. So now, Nicoletta, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I would like really to thank the organizers for their invitation and also for the intellectual companionship, for mutual trust and esteem over the years, because it is always a great pleasure and honor to be here. And I will start with a quote from Michel Leiry's book, L'âge d'homme, The Age of Man, in which he takes stock of his own existence. Things are done and undone. I remain embedded in these ages of life, and I feel less and less hope that I will be able to escape their framework. My work focuses on how the social categories of age, gender, and generation frame, organize, and make meaningful the fluidity of biological changes and the passage of time. It also analyzes how the people concerned will appropriate and even subvert these categories. As the quote by Leiry suggests, I look at the tension between the framework and that contains the changes and the social experience of subjects whose existence exceeds the encasement that fixes them. Uncertainty and childhood play a fundamental role in this, and I will explore their connection through 3 entries today that they are at the very core of my research. They are the body, the time, and the person. I'm very jealous of the PowerPoint presentation of this morning. They're full of images. The mine will be really very plain and quiet, even to that. Well, the first section of my work explores the body and its jolts during childhood and youth, and more generally in the critical moments of a life course, such as sickness, age transitions, the beginning of an existence. All human beings are caught in a vital flux that entirely changes them through their existence. But in European societies, childhood, in particular, is characterized by incompleteness, instability, and immaturity. Biological, psychological, and social transformations constitute the form of life of children. Their bodies change fast and sometimes in unpredictable ways. Says Silvio, 12 years old. In the morning, I wake up and I'm skinny, and in the evening, I feel enormous. It's probably something that comes in waves. Hips grow rounder, trousers do not fit anymore, sizes succeed each other quickly, voices change in an unequal and asymmetrical rhythms of development. Children face impassioned growth spurts, like those big feet and enormous nostrils that worry Sophia, 10 years old, and periods when things slow down lazily. All these are manifestations of a body that is out of control and that is measured in comparison to other bodies. This condition of incompleteness and instability is made meaningful and regulated by knowledge and institutions as we studied in research carried with children between the ages of 9 and 13, and we looked at how these children and their entourage, parents, other kids, friends, classmates, experiences these bodies in rapid transformation, and the way members of the medical profession, educators, or media deal with it. So you have the name of the research I refer to at the end of the slide each time. The growth reveals the mutual influence of the condition as an operation of objectivation and the experience as an operation of subjectivation. But just like subjective experiences, social norms are also very different and sometimes they contradict each other. Children are required to compose and find the right measure, to dance on the lines of what is allowed here and what is thrown up there. The process of fitting a body to a certain age collides with imperfect coincidence. Thus, going back to the 9 to 13 years old, where the adults use well-defined names like child, preteen, adolescent, children define themselves as a big child, a teenage child, a semi-teen, sometimes a child, sometimes a teenager, but not a really teen, between preteen and teenager, a bit of each other, between the two, but closer to teenager. This uncertainty grows stronger when children and teens suffer from chronic illness, as I develop in detail in research on growing up with a chronic condition. Turner syndrome, which is a chromosome disorder that slows down growth, brings the children who have it to interpret signs from a body that is opaque and that does not grow like other bodies. With diabetes, the sugar high and lows require the attention to be tuned to certain sensations like sudden thirst or fatigue. Children have also to embody, for example, technical device, what it means for the body to be more and more instable. For asthma, some children sharpen their senses in order to be able to detect the wheezing announcing an attack. And while they are decoding these clues, these children have also to make sure that they do not drown in the ocean of signs and have to learn to prioritize them. Uncertainty also affects the age position. Some skills or concerns put children with a chronic disease in a condition outside of childhood. In the same way, being a woman of small stature without menses or a chest can challenge the idea of belonging to a gender or an age. Sickness challenges the idealized normalcy for an age and a gender and reveals the powerful normative force of developmental thinking. Age thus constitutes one of the last bastions of naturalization and essentialization. It is based on an interpretation of biological facts combined with a sequence of socially determined roles. Sometimes this combination is harmonious, but sometimes it is not. And these tensions constitute individual experience. They turn the different ages of life into an unstable construction that will vary depending on society, social circumstances, times, and social relations. Finally, the fluctuations of the body over time and the hermeneutic work they foster undermine the double reductionism of the idea that either everything is social or everything is biological. In other words, the double reductionism, the double and opposite reductionism of naturalization and radical constructivism. Children's bodies are as much as a social construct as they are a biological reality of transformation, as also Alan Prout showed it. The body's bustle its secretions, its metamorphoses, and its manifestations arouse social responsive and reflexive practices. Children are also thought of as other than adults from the perspective of time. Alison James and Alan Prout remind us that the question we most often ask children, how old are you and what would you like to do when you grow up, puts them at the center of a maturing process where what is considered important is not their present being, but their future life as adults. This temporal alienation between the projection into an idealized past of which child is the ultimate metaphor and the anticipation of future is a specific way to construct otherness, as for instance Johannes Fabian showed his book Time and Other, and it called it the denial of coherentness. This relationship to time is intertwined with two other temporal orientations which interest us today. First, there is the increased attention to age transitions and to existential thresholds. Public and sociological debates in France often deplore the lack of rites de passage, rites of passage, in contemporary societies. However, I feel that the range and the force of these rights has been sometimes idealized, but almost all that the fact of successfully passing from one age to the next still has its importance. Moreover, it is a central moment in the biography of a person and in the making of a human person. We are witnessing an injunction to succeed in this transition, in order to stabilize the objective unpredictability and the subjective uncertainty brought on by the future. To succeed one's puberty, to manage one's beginning of middle school or high school or university, and later on the start of parenthood, the pregnancy or the first signs of aging, all these passages validate turning points in existence. With Virginie Vinel, we have studied the medical transition from pediatric to adult wards for youth suffering from a chronic illness. However, a lot of anticipatory events that might seem minor, as visiting the school or buying new clothes or a cell phone before entering the middle school, underlined the importance of these moments. In a society that praises individual responsibility, this unpredictability intertwines with the reminder of the individual freedom and the power to act. Adolescents and youth are invited to turn these moments of vulnerability into challenges, and the numerous first times that punctuate the entry into youth, first night out, first sexual intercourses, first time getting drunk, first holidays without parents, and so on, trigger apprehension, but also constitute moments of experimentation and self-government. This optimization of transition, I use the term optimization as Nicholas Rose used the term of optimization of life. The injunction to make the right choices and to turn weakness into strength raise new concern. A recent study we did on memories of the COVID-19 among teenagers and elderly people showed how much teenagers, and especially girls, feel that they missed their transition between middle school and high school, and how much they apprehend the consequences of what they name a failure in their school and professional career. The moral injunction to optimize the age transition is also run into a contradiction, and this will be my second point. There is a gap, in my opinion, between the diffuse rhetoric of anticipation found both in scientific and political discourse and a social reality in which this anticipation is often disregarded or impossible. For example, in managing chronic or rare disease, children and teens have to cope with the present filled with uncertainty. Uncertainty about symptoms, disease progression, treatment options. However, they have also to anticipate a future that is constantly changing and called into question by the progress of the biomedical field. For these young people and their families, the future is both something that is difficult to think about and something that constantly interferes with the present. We observed this in a research carried on with Eva Diacona on the life course of girls and women who have Turner syndrome. From their youngest age, they are projected into therapeutical choices that will have consequences on their future lives. For instance, should they take growth hormones or not? Should they preserve their oocyte in view of an ALT later on? Should they try an experimental treatment? These anticipatory regimes provide hope, but also more uncertainty, challenges and ethical dilemmas. Decisions need to be made in the present, and who take this decision, for a distant future whose results are not even certain. It brings into play different socially and culturally constructed vision of children too. Should children be allowed to make their own decision, or should someone else do it for them? To whom do children belong, to take this expression of Martin Segalen? How can their voices be heard when it comes to choices about their bodies, and how do adults strike that delicate balance between protecting them and acknowledging their right to decide for themselves? To make a person. Childhood, body and time question the idea of personhood and the things that are crucial to its achievement. Some research on perinatal death or family resemblances focus on the child as a concentrate of all the expectations, values and ideals of a group. This research brings together the two meanings which the French language confers on the word child, enfant. Enfant is both a child as poor, the child by the age, and the child as filius, the child by the generational position. And children, and this trait d'union underline the role of the child as a passeur, as a channel between the living and the dead and between the generation. But also they show how children are in a system of intergenerational relation where the continuity of the genealogical group and of the society is played out between permanence and renewal. This is why I studied some rituals that are practiced in French maternity wards after a perinatal loss or a pregnancy that is interrupted for medical reasons. During these small secular ceremonies, which are initiated by the medical staff to reduce their own pain and the suffering of the grieving parents, humanizing actions are put in place. For example, dressing the fetus, naming it, caressing it, burying it with the childhood objects. And the point here is to affiliate to parenthood and to socially recognize beings who are in a condition of liminality between life and death and between human and not yet human. In France, these practices do not call into question the right to abortion. It's important to say that. However, they raise questions concerning the threshold of humanization and personhood through what Boltanski called a manipulation of fetal categories. And these thresholds also depend on whether we take the perspective of the group of the social representation or that of grieving individuals. Another study looks at the production of family resemblances in Warsaw and Rome. When children are born, the search for family resemblances answers to three main requirements: to familiarize this stranger, who is the newborn child, to give the child a place into the genealogy, and to turn him or her into a singular person. Similitudes are produced through multiple representation and practices. Ideas of blood, genes, bones, milk, mimetic behaviors, techniques of the body, pictures or videos, but also performative sentences. All these different grasps create different bodies, and these different bodies are also different connections to different kins. These resemblances evolve over time, and they change with age, with positions in generation and circumstances. They are never given once and for all. People are not passive receivers of transmission. Through their action, they propel, even children, change and reformulate what is passed on. Family traits, family heirs, thus embody a collective memory, family ties, elective relationships, emotions, but also national or regional belongings. They constitute a cultural practice that produces singular persons and members of the group through resemblance and dissemblance. This research has convinced me of the need to treat age, gender, and generation as a single greatest anthropological issue that enables society to manage uncertainty connected to its continuity and renewal. Following the age transitions properly is often associated with being socially appropriate for a given gender or a sexuality, and both age and gender intertwine with generational positions and their successions. In my fieldwork, I see that as children advance through age, other generational positions are rearranged too, and there is a wide literature in anthropology about this. When daughters enter puberty, or when one of the children marry, the parents pass in another phase in their lives. Change also affects ship birth order. When the younger sister has her first period, while the elder sister doesn't yet menstruate, this will upset the hierarchy among the siblings, as we saw in several research. Considering body, age, gender, and generation together provides access to the cultural practices that encompass the production and reproduction of social beings, both alive and dead, in their mutual relations. They are, in my work, the four corners of this frame, which organizes and encases the doing and undoing, to recall Lehis, of things, of beings, and of social groups. So, conclusion for research with children provides insight into a society that has made the politicization of life and of time a central issue. It lies at the crossroads of the body individual's fulfillment, which lives in the present, and the regulation of a collective body species, which is the seat of life's resources, coming from the past and projecting into the future. That is why defining threshold and the passing of threshold is crucial. It is a chronopolitics, as a biopolitics too, where collective concerns crystallize around birth and conception, but also around other moments as puberty, considered as a risky time, especially when it comes about gender and sexuality. I think, for instance, at the social panics in France around the hypersexualization of young girls. Hypersexualization. So, the government of children and the control over uncertainty go hand in hand. Hence, the political stakes of thinking about anticipating and regulating the body and more generally the life of children. Their birth, their growth, their well-being, their attribution to a gender, the debate on their sexuality, their performance, their projection into the future, all constitute social issues that are more important today than even before. They generate a plethora of norms, actors, and systems of protection and regulation. But also they generate controversies, criticism, concurrences, and questions on who should have the last word when it comes to their care. The best interest of the child becomes an explanation itself that legitimizes a range of practices and opinion. I was wondering at that and listening to the pornography some minutes ago. Meanwhile, children, singular and concrete, live with all this. They compose with it, though not without difficulty. But they also show how, under constraint, they are full subjects that act in a world that is theirs and ours. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks, Nicoletta, for this amazing and thought-provoking presentation. And I think it's time to first round of questions to our panelists. And my first question is why? So, why is it important to conduct research with children? Why do you do it? Eva, could you start?
Okay. Thank you, Nicoletta, for your wonderful talk. It was so dense and so theoretically laden, and maybe I will give a little bit simpler context about childhood studies in general, how they work, and how they began, and why. Why study children? Because they are out there. They are a group that was understudied and still is, in my opinion. And it started like in the 80s in the Western world, as usually, in Scandinavian countries and in UK and maybe US also. And it started as interdisciplinary field. And I think that this is the biggest trend of childhood studies. So anthropology is a part of this bigger picture and bigger research project on childhood and children. And the researchers just realized that children are important members of the society, and like without them the picture of the society is not full in just basically. And what was also fueling these discussions at the beginning was the Convention of the Rights of the Child, and it's Article 12, which is very known in our research community because it says that children have rights to express their opinions in matters that concern them, and this is like a starting point for modern childhood studies. And of course, childhood studies had since the beginning certain changes and certain waves, certain discussions. So maybe we will have time to talk about it a little bit more later. But for now, I would say that at the beginning, why researchers started to doing research with children is that they realized, I think, that this temporal alienation about which Nicoletta talked. So children have been constructed as others, and this research is a kind of response to this social construction of childhood, and researchers were and are trying to unpack this construction. But what was special also in childhood studies is one thing is this cooperation between people from various disciplines, and it is still going on. There are very good, very nice conferences that gather people from very different fields. And but also, what is important is that this notion of methodology and ethics, which are really crucial point in this kind of research, because you cannot do research with children the way you did it with other people. So you have to really think about the methodology. And when you think about the methodology, you have to think about ethics, because you have to do the research ethically, taking into account power imbalance in the field, which is like obvious, visible. We are bigger and we are stronger and we have stronger voices. And we can talk to teacher parents and be listened to by them. So we have to really think about our positionality in the field. And we have to think of research methods or even techniques that will allow us to enter the children's worlds. And I think that this is what we do in our team constantly. We discuss the methodologies. It's so crucial for us.
Thank you. Thank you for the possibility of meeting with you, and thank you, Nicoletta, for your great speech. I'm not a typical member of this panel because I'm not an anthropologist and I'm not a sociologist too. Lately I'm a cultural historian, but I think that conducting research with children is very, very important. In this regard, two common arguments are often made. Firstly is that children are weak and overlooked subjects. This is Eva's argument, and so they need kind of anthropological intervention. As we know, children are suppressed by various regimes of power. Nicoletta said about it a lot. Primarily produced and reproduced by adults. They have limited influence on cultural, political and social environment. The second argument why conducting research with children is important is sometimes formulated by normative disciplines as pedagogy, for example. Pedagogists often say that researching children is important because it allows us to anticipate and shape our future. In times of widespread crisis, environmental, geopolitical, social, this argument is treated as very attractive. For example, now we can see how much attention has been paid to young people after the last elections in Poland. In this context and another, we can see many hasty and superficial diagnoses about them. In my view, both arguments are insufficient. They pay little attention to the fact that childhoods are diverse, sorry for my English. The first argument seems not to understand the fact that the position of the child is constantly changing, and the empowerment of children's agency has many complicated functions today. A few weeks ago, I read an article in Gazeta Prawna that argued children should shape our world and we should therefore make their social position stronger. That's true, but I also believe that such voices sometimes reflect a deeper meaning. In the face of crisis, adults may wish to delegate the responsibility for the world they have created. Sometimes empowerment, after all, can also mean delegating responsibility. A few months ago, another anecdote, I attended a festival of democratic education. I spoke with people who laid the foundation for democratic education in Poland after 1989. They would like to empower children and free them from school-based oppression. During the festival, they expressed surprise and even helplessness. In their opinion, we confront a huge generational revolution. I think that the reason of this generational revolution is a topic for another discussion. But what is important for me that now the children usually do not want agency and empowerment. In fact, they are suspicious about it. These children feel that adults too readily give up their authoritative roles, failing to take responsibility for making decisions in areas where children feel rather weak and closed. I believe that researching of children is very important, not only because they are fascinating and different than us. They have uniquely insightful perspective, not just on adulthood. Their point of view, which we don't need to exoticize, helps us expand our understanding of every element of social and cultural reality. And broadening perspectives is for me the primary task of anthropology. That's all on the beginning.
Thanks. Nicoletta, do you want to add something?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. It is really interesting because the first answer, I thought it's, making research with children for the same reason as we continue to do it with the adults. And it's not so provocative because really it means to consider children social full actors as adults. But in fact, other reasons are because I think that contemporary society is seeing a genuine passion for children. And when I use the term passion, I think the love for children, but also suffering for children. There is, the passion contributes to inflame any debate where there are children and where children are protagonists. And does not mean that children are more or better protected than in the past, but it means that rhetoric, and I evoked a few minutes ago on the best interest of child, have profound effects, even if sometimes the effects of the best interest of child are in a very different direction. I think that there is, between the different figures of childhood, there is sure a form of idealization. I speak from a fieldwork which is in France and in Italy, so perhaps it's a little bit different that you face here. But teens especially are the symbol of oral condition when anything is possible. They have the models of a society that values the change, the project, the freedom of choice, the possibility to renew oneself any moment. Children's performance in school, sport, or social life are very scrutated. I don't know if there is this word in English. And they validate the parents' project, but also the social projects. So this is a first figure of child. There is also the powerful figure of the child as a victim. Our children are victims. They are victims of war, poverty, crisis, but that they are not only victims. And this image of the vulnerable or innocent being who needs to be protected, at least in France, but also in Italy, amplifies the suspicions placed on the parents, which are regarded as not completely appropriate to educate their children, which in turn justifies a displacement of authority. And I think that is also important to have this idea. There is a snowball of fears that goes hand in hand with their systematic political exploitation. I'm thinking also to the neo-nationalist discourses and how they exploit the issues of childhood. This is not new. The modern image of child and the building of the nation emerged at the same time. But this image of the child as the moral guarantee is becoming stronger and stronger, I think, at the Italian societies, in the political conservative projects and that are structured around anti-gender movements, around the idea of so-called natural family, the affirmation of masculinist values, in a sort of the nostalgia of inexistent. This is a formulation of Stefania Bernini, the historian that you know very well here. I think that, I don't know, around the child there is a language of simple passions that become the fertile ground for the development of essentialized identities and social divisions. So I think that carrying on research with children is important because it helps, I would say, to cool down these debates, to introduce some distance, and also to listen to the voices of real children, because real children may be very far and very different, and their experiences are very, very different and very far from this imaginary child who has a blurry, empty figure that can be filled with different meanings.
Thank you very much. So I think it's time for the second question. And the second question is, how? Same order, Eva?
Okay.
How?
Okay.
So, how should research with children, and how should research with children be conducted? It's a question. It's more about methodology.
Do we have two more hours or so?
No, you have 5 minutes, my dear.
Okay, so
I will be shorter.
Okay, no, I will be really short because I think that one thing I already said is that this is this power imbalance in the field, but of course it is like only like sometimes superficial power imbalance in this way because children have their own power in the field, and they are in their homes, for example, in their schools, in their places, and also they have I don't know, for example, linguistic power to name things in the way we would or not understand them, and there are many ways in which they can also balance this power in the field. But what is important in these discussions in childhood studies, I think, is this concept of methodological immaturity. So I think that what we as childhood researchers have to do is to step back a little bit and and do not try to have a neat, nice research, but just step back and be prepared for mess and for things that will grow during the research. I also said about certain techniques. I can talk about one of the techniques I used. It is in my latest research on children and the pandemic. So with my co-researcher, we were thinking how to talk about with children about the pandemic, and especially the moment when the pandemic was over, but the memories were fresh. So what to do, how to really grasp this knowledge from children, and we decided to make pandemic time capsules. So children prepared messages in a small pieces of paper for the future people to explain them what was the pandemic, and it appeared to be a really good to start the conversation with. And also, so I think that what is most important in this how question is to adjust our research to the ways of understanding, ways of expressing of research participants. So this is not new or different from any other research, but in case of children, for example, for me it means it has to be possibly art-based, possibly movement-based. So movement is a really important part of my research. So with these time capsules, we just move into the past and into the future, and we move with our bodies. So I think that that we have to really think our methods through to make them, I would say, just for children. Because if we do not prepare well, we can just miss some children. And this is yet another example from my research, but this is by Celina Kamecka-Antczak, who was co-researcher, and she really wanted to include children with intellectual disabilities into this study. And we did our research in kindergartens. So kindergartens are really inclusive in Poland. I mean, children with all the disabilities can go to a regular kindergarten. And so on the surface, we just thought that we have really cool research technique, and it really worked with other children. But it appeared that it doesn't work at all with children with intellectual disabilities. So what Celina did, she really stepped back, thought a lot about it, and she just tried to find ways that are appropriate in the field. And it appeared that children with intellectual disabilities have this speech therapy technique, which are books that are like diaries made every day. So she just discovered that those diaries are very good research tool to talk to children with intellectual disabilities about the pandemic. So what I mean is that we have to be we have to be really prepared. We have to have all those techniques, but we also have to be prepared that it may not work, and to be open to what we encounter in the field, and be really flexible in that.
Do you want to say something about this?
Yeah. Also, one more thing is after all this research, we have to represent it, yes, somehow, and we have to represent it. This is our task to research community, and so we write books. And this is our series, Dzieci, granice, etnografie, Children, Borders, Ethnographies. These are books from our past research projects, and the new one about the pandemic is on its way. And as you can see, there are 2 volumes in that. We just do it this way, that we have proper academic book, and we have academic book for children. So this isn't like kids book with only illustrations, but we have really text that talks about the research we've made, about each article which is published in the volume, but in the language that is possible to be understood by children like 10 years old, for example. So we have volume 1 and volume 2 in our research series. Yeah, so it can be used to just spread knowledge, spread research, but also it is an ethical choice to make our research available to people who took part in it. Yeah.
So thanks, Marta.
Okay.
So, how?
I don't feel comfortable with discussing about specific methodologies for researching with children. Because I work with historical narratives of children and on childhood, so I'm not competent, especially in ethical aspects of this. Eva, Magda, Nicoletta are much better equipped in this area. But what I can offer, however, by researching of historical narratives, I think, is how research with children should not be conducted. I believe such research is constantly at risk of being shaped by our cultural tendency to mythologize children. Our society is full of dreams about an authentic, spontaneous and unconditioned subject, and these dreams give children a special appeal in research. There is a persistent danger that we project on childhood our cultural hopes and myths, especially today when for both philosophical and cultural reasons we tend to value unstable potential and incomplete subjects. Today we like subjects in process, so we sometimes like children more than adults. Janusz Korczak, a prominent Polish Jewish thinker and activist, is a very important person for me, offers a compelling perspective here. He told us not to see in every child our own hopes or projections of a better future. Instead, he encourages us to see the child as an actor, someone who plays many roles depending on the situation, relationship and context, and to observe these roles carefully. Many years before Tim Ingold, he was skeptical about child-adult dichotomy. I believe this is a productive direction for the field of childhood studies. It's my short commentary. Thank you.
Okay, Nicoletta, how do you conduct your research with children?
Well, I think that first of all, what I like and I still always defend is the idea of a solid ethnography, carried as it is possible in the long term, but it is not always possible, alas, and as close as possible to the experience of the interlocutor. And it's really the idea to keep one's feet firmly on the ground for this risk of mythologization of children, but also to avoid some traps, for example, the trap of cuteness, this enchanted world of children, the idea of sentimentalization in the relationship with children, but also the instrumentalization of the children themselves, because it seems to me that sometimes in childhood studies, not always, but there is the temptation of making the child as a romantic figure, the last expression of the last slave to be set free, or the last Robinson Crusoe island to escape to. And I think that we have really to make attention to that. And sometimes when in fieldwork, I ask myself, is my word the word of an adult, or the word of a young people that I am interviewing, that I want to make heard here? Who is speaking? Who is the real word that I am transmitting through my research? Also because the reality is very complex. I think your work on the early surgery among children with congenital adrenal hyperplasia, it's difficult to make a great division. The power of the adults and the children. Everything is so much complex, and there are no simple answers and no anathema that can help in making what are sometimes very difficult decisions. Another point in the fieldwork is the material culture. Thank you for the text you showed, because I think that material culture is very interesting for two reasons. It is at the same time the production of consumption, of the word of consumption, and it designates somehow what a child should be, but also these objects are appropriated and embodied by children in a very subjective way. And so it is very interesting because it makes clear the difference between the norms and how children deal with norms. And a last point that I would also speak about is the question of participation. I wrote about the importance of your collection of books, so I don't speak about it, but I think that is really a wonderful idea. But I would also keep your attention about the question that participation can sometimes charge children with the responsibilities or with the management of social relationships that are quite hard. And I would take just an example. There has been a study carried out in France where children were asked to find out in their school about the professions of their classmates' parents and then to rank them. And this method generated conflicts, and many children saw their parents' occupation be discredited, mocked, or marginalized, and that increased the effect of social class, indeed of reducing it. So I will finish that.
Thank you. Third round of our questions. The question is what? Very short answer, please.
Yes.
And but it's not,
Wow.
it's not only a question about your research. It's more about your dreams, fantasies, about research with children. What areas are still worth exploring? What do you think? Marta, maybe now.
Wow. Okay. Of course, I can answer the question in a general way. I don't think any researcher can point to topics that are universally important for future research, but I can share what currently interests me. Recently, it's of course only my opinion, new childhood studies have increasingly focused not only on the political, cultural and social context of childhood, but also on the idea of the childhood as a political subject and actor, especially child as an important actor in the public sphere. The child is someone who not only deserves recognition, but also empowerment in political sense. I think it's very inspiring for me research direction, but I think that we pay too little attention for child as an economic actor. This is not just about economic conditions. We already know that childhood in the global north is different than childhood in the global south, and the class differences significantly shape children's experience. But somehow the economic dimension of childhood is still framed as one of limitation rather than agency. Children are often seen as passive recipients within economic systems, the victims, as Nicoletta said, the victims of poverty, the victims of economical crisis. Children are often, not often seen as active participants who manage not only money, because economy is not about money, but manage goods and their effort and time. Korczak was among the first to recognize that a child's developmental effort is not merely a physiological process, it's an intentional, reflective and intensive work and I think the labor. He also observed that children have a fascinating relationship with things and that we can use children's experience to question dominant forms of adult economics. He was deeply engaged in the cooperative movement and school cooperativism and alternative economic practices very popular in interwar Poland. And for me it's very fascinating and underexplored area of children's practices, of course historical children's practices.
Thanks, Nicoletta.
Yes, I will be short. First, I would say put into perspective the research done with children and the research done with people who are at different stages in their life course. So to make closure, for example, about life transition, research with children and research with adults, because adulthood it's really not so much explorated as an age in itself. The second one would be to consider better the childhood experience in the research with the adults. For example, among women who have Turner syndrome, and if they are of different generations, their experience of childhood, of disease, of treatment are really very, very different from a generation to another. And so I think that childhood experiences have consequences for the way people live their adult lives and the main stages in the life course. A third one would be how children create our own memories. So I think that, Eva would speak about it better than me. But I think that this transmission of memory and also of historical events could be a very interesting insight in the perception that children have of otherness and of the division between us and them. And in this historical moment, it seems to me very important. And the last one would be the relation to time and the visions of future among young people. Because future is really not only very present, but is a cause of major concern. And I think that trying to compare on a European scale how future is contemplated, prepared, even rebuffed, could be quite interesting.
Okay, thank you. Eva, what and maybe what for? Okay, we try to combine these two questions because we have
What for? I
time.
think really short.
So really short. What and what for?
Okay, what also it can be short because we in our team try to have just research that is interesting for us, research subjects, and it always appears that it is much more political than we thought before while planning the research, like children with who are going to IVF. It was not only like family history subject, but very strongly politically loaded subject, and many others. So I'm quite sure whatever I will choose for my future, it will be political in this sense. And also it will also always add up to all those recurring themes I was talking about, like this about agency, this about voice, this about representation. For example, the children's voices are always suspicious, but there is this strong effort to make them heard. But at the same time, we know that we cannot represent children's voices, like in Spivak's work. Yes, we cannot represent the people who are marginalized, because it will always be our strong voice to be heard, and so on and so forth. So I think that we will I would adapt to these discussions. But for me, maybe the main question I'm thinking about now is this research beyond thinking about children as being at risk and risky. So this is widely discussed in public discussions, like especially about boys. They are at risk and they are risky at the same time, and it is also in the academic world very often. For example, in psychological books, like in academic books, this is very normative notion of child who is at risk of something or is in the future prone to be risky for the society. So I would like to really avoid such division. And what for? What for? I think that maybe the answer is really simple for epistemic justice and for also in the long term for social justice, for people of all ages, generations to be included in the research, and for yet another lens through which we can see the social problems and also the how our society is constructed and also politicized, but also for pragmatic reasons. Like I think that childhood studies can just produce wonderful knowledge about certain areas of society that are maybe not that well seen and that well represented. And also in my last research project, I also asked for the advice. The children who participated did produce some advice about the future pandemics for all of us. So maybe this is the knowledge we need for the future.
Thank you very much. And Nicoletta, what are the main goals of childhood studies? Yes.
Childhood studies reached the age of maturity, and they have been around for almost half a century, even if in different way according to the countries. So I think that it's a good time to come back to some of the founding concepts and to see how they have disseminated in other fields, and see also if childhood studies fostered new questions for generally for the general anthropology. Did the research with children allow us to rethink otherwise the concept of person, individual, subject? What about the political dimension of body? So it's taking children out of the childhood without losing the specificity of this field. I think also to the debate about the agency. Sure, I think that agency, as Marta said, is more complicated today, but it is also more questioned, at least in France, among the researchers working with children. And so I think that what for also depends a lot of the context, and also of the scientific context, not only social context, in which the research is done. Because, for instance, in France, childhood studies were violently attacked by researchers who saw in the concept of child agency an illusion of the idea of social class domination. And it reactivated an ancient conflict in French social sciences between an approach that pays attention more to the individual and another more Bourdieusian, as I can say. And so behind the conflict of paradigms, sometimes there are other conflicts, the conflict of legitimacy, of appropriation of the field, of funding also for the research, university positions, academic recognition. And so I think that childhood studies have now to deal with all this.
So when Marta, do you want to say
question,
something about it?
Okay, the question of what for is a question of what we want to project by research at all. And so it's not just about the goals of research, but the broader goals of politics and policy too. But I think this orientation toward the future and politics can be dangerous, and I agree with Nicoletta, who said that children may help us to calm down the public debate. It risks depriving children of their right to the present by studying them primarily in terms of what they will become. Children are always doing something that Clifford Geertz, a historical person in anthropology, once described in an essay, which is an important essay for me personally, about the value of anthropology. He wrote that anthropology may serve to flip our tables, and I think it's about children's too. They move across and against our research frameworks and methodologies. They can, metaphorically speaking, pull the rug out from under our feet and force us to confront our own intellectual uncertainties and incompetencies. In those moments, I believe that real anthropology begins. It's not a too progressive idea, but I think it's idea very necessary for us. That's all.
So thank you very much. So thank you very much for everything.